Welcome to the Last in Line podcast, where we discuss faith, hope, and truth in the lives of amazing servant leaders. You are in the right place if you crave purpose and if you hunger for a life of significance. This podcast applies biblical truth to our daily lives, and we pray that you walk away encouraged and inspired. This is the Last in Line podcast.
Hey, we're honored to bring you some good news. Recent development in our sponsorship programs. We are now partnering with Christ Coffee, who is an online business that is working to save children from sex trafficking, and they are spreading the gospel throughout the world. Christ Coffee is more than just a brand. It is a movement where each cup is a testament to their commitment to high quality beans, the spread of the gospel, and making a tangible impact in the community and around the world. For those of you that don't know, which I know all of you do, trafficking of any kind, of kids, adults, men, women, is a major epidemic. More than 1 million children are being exploited, and you can actually make a dent in that in a good way, and help take a part in setting some of those kids free when you shop at Christ Coffee. 10% of every sale is donated to the rescue of children and the spread of the gospel. Their mission, guys, we can partner with that. And each cup you brew actually does go to saving a child. So they're actually blessing us and our customers, our listeners, with a discount. So type in Last in Line and you'll get 10% off of your first order. And it is quality premium coffee beans. Gentlemen, the dark roast is some of the best I've ever had. So don't wait. Go to Christ Coffee, order your first bag, use Last in Line for 10% off that first order, and I guarantee you'll keep coming back. Brew a cup, rescue a child with Christ Coffee. Gentlemen, you're in for a treat today because I want to welcome Trevor Farnes, the founder of Mountain Ops Supplements, and he is a strong man of faith, entrepreneur, author of The Conquer Code, Unlocking Success Through Failure, Faith, and Family. He is all about core values and built this company, Mountain Ops, on the backbone of the foundation of Christ and the Bible, and just a moral compass that he operates his team with. And he is full of knowledge about business, about faith, about building a camaraderie in a community and a strong business culture. He not only is the co-founder of Mountain Ops, but his focus is primarily on a mission that is about improving individual and families' lives through products that are transformational in the nutrition space, the energy space, protein supplement space, and he is very involved, he and his wife, in what they call Operation Conquer Hunger, where they have given over 7 million, I believe, meals away, and portion of the proceeds from sales of his products on his website goes toward that Operation Conquer Hunger. And we talk a lot about just family values, family standards that he set, company culture, like I said, leadership, and just how to really balance business and faith and operate under kingdom business principles that the Bible talks about, while honoring our role as ambassadors for Jesus. So guys, Trevor Farnes has been on several major podcasts. He is a very successful, one of the best places voted in Utah to work. And so we're honored to have him. Heard about him on Ryan Mickler's podcast, reached out to him. He's very interactive. He sent me some products, a little care package, and I actually love their Ignite powder. A little bit of energy, a little bit of clarity, tastes wonderful. It's pretty good little pre-workout mixture, if you will. So, dude, their products are solid. Their culture is solid. And Trevor himself is a solid individual. So we're honored to have Mr. Trevor Farnes to Last in Line podcast. Well, it's not every day you get a CEO of a major company who is celebrating their 10th year in business. But Trevor Farnes, welcome to Last in Line podcast.
Hey, thank you. It's a privilege to be on here. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, man. Happy 10th anniversary, I'm guessing, right? I think I saw that somewhere.
10-year anniversary for Mountain Ops, and actually a title change for me as well. I've just stepped aside as the CEO. I'm now founder and chief visionary officer. I hired my replacement at the 10-year mark for multiple different reasons, but it's been incredible. He's been here for about 20 days now, and that doesn't mean I'm going anywhere. I'm still here and in full force. I'm just going to focus in on sharing Mountain Ops, bringing awareness to it, speaking, podcasting, doing this type of thing. We're starting our own podcast at Mountain Ops called the Conquercast, and I'll host that. But I'll end up getting to do some of the things that I've really been wanting to do. But reporting to the board and all that kind of has kept me from doing some of those things. And we've got an incredible board that I sit on as well. But I'm just super excited for this new phase of Mountain Ops and what we've got going after a really good 10-year run, and the next 10 years will be better than the first. So
yeah, no, I mean, I've listened enough to your story throughout different podcasts you've been on and did some research. And I know you wrote a book that released this year, I believe.
Right, on our 10-year anniversary date, we celebrated 10 years, and the book launched at the same time. So
dang, well, that was a PR nightmare, I'm sure, or a PR dream, whatever you want to call it. But
a lot going on. So
burning both ends. I know that. So I guess to do maybe a quick, I don't know, 20,000 foot view of a decade in review, like, what are some of your milestones or biggest wins and losses? Maybe we don't focus so much on losses, but sometimes it's good to see where you got to pivot and make adjustments. So what would be a highlight reel for you thus far, if there's not too many to count?
It's been an amazing ride, and honestly, going to those losses, we can maybe speak about that in a bit, but we wouldn't be here if we hadn't been there with some of the losses that we faced prior to this 10-year run. And part of that comes into play with our Operation Conquer Hunger. I look at one of the highlights of Mountain Ops, and every order that comes through our site, we donate a meal to a child in need. And even through our retail partners, we donate a meal. And we're about to hit the 7 million meal mark. So over the last few years, hitting the first million, and then the second million, then the 5 million, then the 6 million, and now going on. We just broke a Guinness World Record in our 10-year anniversary month as well, where we had the most people together packing meals in a 24-hour period of time, and got a Guinness World Record. And so there's been that. Honestly, though, the highlight for me has been being a part of assembling the team that is the secret sauce of Mountain Ops. If you come here, I'm a simple man. I've got my gifts that God gives me. But sometimes I look at others and I think, man, they've got all the skill and the talent and the ability. I just have been blessed to be a part of assembling a team centered around core values that have been strictly observed. We've drawn the line in the sand as our kind of non-negotiables, as we've built a business with a mission to improve lives over the last 10 years. And that's what we've done. But it's been done through incredible individuals with hearts of gold, and they're mission driven, and we're just attacking it all together. So, I don't know, from the beginning and creating this incredible brand with partners and team members that really are fueled by the passion of improving lives, seeing transformations occur, feeding hungry children. We were awarded last year, in our 10th year, the best place in Utah to work.
Wow.
That was incredible. And that had to come by way of our team members filling out a survey. Every single team member, we had to have 100% submission, and they had to describe the workplace, the leadership, the values, like our mission, our community outreach, our product, their fulfillment as far as personal growth and opportunity. And we were awarded that this last year. So there's awesome. Been some incredible things that I look at, and to me, it's all about connection, and it's connection to people, and doing things together that really matter in life. And that's kind of the highlight reel for me over the last 10 years. And yeah,
Wow.
to end off the 10 years launching a book that tells that story and gets into detail, specifically around the hard times, which I'm so
Hmm.
grateful for. They've been the life lessons that I needed, the perspective gain that I needed, to really do some things that I feel God wanted me to do, but I needed to go through some things first to understand why.
Yeah, no, I know that he builds us in those times, and just like this, steel is tested and sharpened with heat and force and resistance and friction and all that adversity. Yeah, I know that you got sharper, and you're, like you said, you're here today because of where you were years ago. I will say, I gotta tell you, I respect and admire the companies that are front facing about their beliefs and their Christian worldview specifically. Because I've
Yeah.
interviewed a lot of guys that are authors, entrepreneurs that are Christian, and they'll post a Bible verse, but if you look on their website, there's really no evidence of any of that. And you guys are right out in front, leaning into that, and I commend you for that. And obviously, it helps to be the founder. You can post whatever you want, but still,
Yeah.
some are reluctant and some are not. And it's cool to watch you be as courageous with your faith as you have been. Now, go into a little bit, and I hate to just try to, I'm not trying to be just like every other interview you've done, but it is worth talking about how bad it got when you were in the low point of real estate, and experienced some financial hardship back in what, oh 07, oh 08, oh 09, in that
Yeah.
range.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, you guys were trying to kind of scrape together where your next meal was coming from, to your point of why you do a lot of what you do now. How bad did it get? And then talk me through some of the scripture that you leaned on or stood on. And I know there's countless, but maybe you had some anchors through that time.
I definitely did. And yeah, I think this is what I love talking about the most because, man, and I'll try to do it without getting emotional. I got sweaty eyes. We're in the fitness industry, you sweat from all sorts of places.
Yeah.
So sometimes
Yeah.
for me, it's my eyes. But yeah, in 2007, we got married, my wife and I, in 2003. We were young. We were ambitious. We were excited about the future. We started having kids right away. And then the goal financially was to put enough aside at the job that I currently had. I was selling pharmaceuticals and making a really good living, had a great commission, and putting that commission as much away as possible, knowing that at some point we wanted to start our own business. So in 2007, the opportunities came our way, and first one in real estate. And had I had a crystal ball and known what was right around the corner in 2008, I would have run the other direction, right? But we entered into some real estate deals that really took us in the shorts, and then, but the biggest one wasn't real estate. There was an aspect of real estate in it that hurt us, but it was a franchise that we bought into. And
Mm.
instead of buying one franchise, we bought multiple. We bought 7 of them, and that came with franchise fees, building out stores, buying inventory. It hired friends and mission. I served a mission for my church for 2 years in Mexico. I hired some of those companions that I was in the mission field with, and they were helping me run these stores. Um,
Drinking from
and
a
it took
fire hose,
Oh man, just
basically
everything
drinking
all at
from a
once.
fire
Yeah.
hose.
And everything costs more and takes longer than you expect in business. It just has always been that way, and I'll always tell people that now from what I've learned. And it took longer to get the stores up and running, and so all of a sudden cash flow and working capital became a thing, and I was becoming educated in that because I had none. I didn't have cash flow. I didn't have working capital. I had enough to get the businesses going. I needed the revenue to start flowing, and it wasn't right away. And so once the stores did open, the franchise got shut down by a regulatory agency. It had nothing to do with anything we were doing, but out of our control. And it got shut down. And so our stores had to close. They were put on pause while there was this investigation done. And we had no staying power at the time. And so I had to, quicker than I had those up and running, I was closing them down. And a ton of cash out on this investment, and my family was in a horrible situation, and we had just signed, on top of getting those stores already, there was 5-year personal guarantees that we had to sign on those retail locations. My wife and I signed on, and they were anywhere from 5 to 7 grand a month, times 5, times 7. And And so we were really struggling, and I couldn't fulfill those landlords didn't want to work with us at the time. They were facing their own financial struggles with the real estate market at the time. They couldn't replace us easily. And so if we couldn't make the payments, they just put liens on our home, on our property. And that's what ended up happening. And so, we stopped paying on our mortgage for a few years, couldn't pay on cars. We were having legal paperwork delivered to our door. It felt like a weekly basis. And my wife would see people taking pictures of our house, not knowing why, but then come to find out after being served legal docs that our house would be up for auction in the coming days. And I was scrambling, just talking to the banks, like, we're good people. We've just got, into the situation. Help us out. We just need a little longer. Fortunately for us at the time, there were so many families going through something similar like that. The banks weren't getting to all the mortgages as quick. So we stayed in our home, and we never lost our home because we had some things transpire to where one day there was this no way out, and the mortgage officer on the other side of the loan is like, we can't do anything else. And then the next day, what was previously rejected, that she called back and she said, I've just got something approved. If you can make this payment today, which is a very reduced mortgage modification, then we'll keep you in your home. This is about 3 years after starting this business, down this business route and entrepreneurship. And we could make that payment just barely. That was like all we could afford. And I said, we'll do it. We can do it. And they kept us in our home. But right when all that happened with the franchise and the real estate, my second daughter ended up in the hospital with some kidney and liver issues. And she was deemed uninsurable because there was a mishap in insurance going from employed to self-employed. And so we had to pay for her medications. We had to pay for her medical care, and all these bills just started stacking up. So it felt like in every direction, any button we pushed that we would hope would go well, it was like just started to crumble around us. And people go through these types of things. When I speak to groups, I'll ask, how many of you face financial difficulties? 90% of the room raise their hand saying, yeah, I've been there. And for different reasons at times. Sometimes it's investments gone bad. Sometimes it's a job loss. Sometimes it's a downward economy, whatever it is. Sometimes there's families that are just in this rut they can't get out of. And for us, we took some risks. We invested, and we found ourselves in a horrible situation. For a period of time, I was pretty upset at the franchise owner that we bought those franchises from, and I didn't wish him any ill will. I was just upset. I felt like I was having to start all over again. We had accumulated this cash, and then we put it in, and now it's just gone. And speaking of going back to God and relying on Him throughout that, like, I was on my knees one night praying next to my bed and voicing my frustrations, like, this doesn't feel fair. I've got to go back. I got to start over. And I don't even know where start over is. I don't know what step to take. And if this guy hadn't have done this or that, and all of a sudden I just kind of, this voice in my head, I wrote the check, I wrote the check for those franchises. It wasn't, there was no gun to my head. Did some things happen out of our control? Yes, but maybe I should have written it for one franchise and then seen how it gone and scaled up from there. I've learned that, you need to scale with things. You need to grow with things. But at the same time, during that, I felt like, there's something I'm supposed to learn from this. And I think it needed to hurt real bad for me to understand all that I was supposed to gain as far as perspective and empathy. And I actually had some experiences before this with just my relationship with God, and some feelings and thoughts that had occurred a year prior to all this financial difficulty, where I felt like I had a dream once, and there was this voice and this feeling of there's a storm of financial difficulty upon the horizon. And I wrote about this in my book, and so that warning voice was there, and it didn't feel like it was there to help me divert and go around the storm. It felt like it was so that while I was in the storm, I could know and remember that God, He was aware this was going to happen. And so if he was allowing this to happen and He told me about it, then there must be something I've got to gain from it. There must be some eyes that I need to see from this, and a heart, a new heart to feel something differently.
That's crazy, because that message then that dream, it wasn't like He said, if you go left, you'll be fine, right? You're saying He was like, hey, you're going to need me through this, because this is going to happen. It's not like, you can jump over this ditch. It's like, you need to get your waders on and get prepared.
Be prepared. It's coming. And I let you know. So know that I love you. I was watching out for you, and I'm here for you. and it's for your good. So oftentimes in life, I think the storms or the waves and such come our way, and we think, um, man, this is all bad. But sometimes those storms and those winds are pushing us in the right direction. Thinking of some of my favorite Bible verses when Christ is walking upon the waters, and the disciples are out in the ship, and they're a little worried. They're like, "Who is this? Is it a ghost? There's some fear that set in." I think it was because they hadn't experienced Jesus in this way to that point. They were seeing, they'd seen miracles, but they hadn't seen him walk on water. So what in the world? There's somebody walking on water. And then I love that Peter gets out, and he gets out of his comfort zone, that this ship, and he gets into these dark waters, and his focus is on the Savior. And that's what we decided to do during the storm that was all about us. We're in some deep waters, we're in some dark waters. Let's keep our focus on the Savior. But there was times, just like Peter, where we look to the side, and the anxiety, the frustration, the feelings of failure, they would creep in, and I would feel like I was sinking. There's a song that says, "Head underwater, they tell you to breathe easy for a while." There's no breathing easy underwater. And so that's how I felt. But I love Peter's response. It's "Save me." Immediately, as he expresses this to his Lord and Savior, the hand is stretched out, and it's stretched out still, and it's stretched out today and tomorrow and the next day, and it's always there. Awesome. And so through that, my wife and I found that there was something we were supposed to experience. We were supposed to experience a strength through our Savior that we hadn't yet to that point. And it came by way of difficulty, came by way of getting out of the boat, getting onto those depths of these dark waters, and then turning to him and saying, it's all you. Like, we will do all that we can. We're willing to walk on these dark waters, but we need you. So save us, however you can, save us. And that's where we found strength.
That's good, man. Well, I mean that. So it's starting, and this has already been greatly illuminated in your life, and you already have clarity about this. But think of all the people that you're feeding that you might not have fed had you not gone hungry or been in that valley. And you had a great quote, and I don't know if this is yours, but I've heard you say it multiple times, but you serve most the person you once were. Is that your quote? Like, did
I
you
wish
come
it
up
was.
With that?
Okay. I need to paraphrase it or something.
That's
so I
pretty
can call
good.
It's not mine. I think it's
really good.
I don't know whose it is, but it's your most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. That's one of the greatest lessons I learned through this, because there was perspective and empathy. And I would just say to anyone listening, anything you go through in life is a perspective gaining opportunity, but it's a choice. You have to choose to see it as such. You have to choose to see how is God positioning that to allow you new empathy, new strength, new eyes, new heart, new mind, like to respond. And one of the things that my wife and I, while going through that, knowing, because we had been warned, there's something we've got to learn. We relied on the miracles of Jesus in the Bible all the time. And especially when it came to, I've got like the bread of life right here. When it talked about the bread of life, that's food. Our kids, we were not starving. There's kids in Africa, there's kids around the world that are starving. We were hungry though. We couldn't pay the school lunch balance. We rarely had anything really good in our cupboard. We were using our food storage and cracking our own wheat, and that's where hunting became so incredible for me. But one of the stories in the Bible was when there was a lad, and he brought a few loaves and a few fishes to the Savior, and it was all he had. It was this few loaves and few fishes, but it was what he had, and he was willing to give it. And then it was multiplied for the masses. And that was the mentality that my wife and I had when we thought, we're going to feed hungry children. We know what it's like to be a parent struggling to feed our children. We know what our children feel like not having the things that they always would like to have. And so we're gaining this perspective. And in our county here where we live, it's 1 in 4 kids go home on the weekend without enough food in the pantry. We were starting to realize our family's at 1 in 4, and we have very few loaves and fishes. But what we do have, we can try to multiply. Yeah. And so we took $22. That's how we started. And $22 a month, that's where we made a contribution to some children in Malawi, Africa. And our goal was to just multiply them, not for the masses, but as much as we could. We didn't know if the boat would ever come in full. And so we didn't wait. We weren't going to wait till it came in full. It wasn't what we expected. It was just enough to have $22 and to make that sacrifice. But what we found is that as we've taken that $22 and then we built a business that helps feed hungry children using the resource from all of our customers that are buying a product that benefits them. We take a piece of that and we feed a hungry child. Now to the masses, 7 million people that have been fed. And what I have found, and what I can promise anyone listening, when we take the few loaves and fishes, even if they're meager, 2 and 5, they come back 12 baskets full.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you have these 12 baskets. What do you do with it? You do more with it,
Yeah.
because it's not ours, it's God's, but God allows us to continue this process. And so there's been opportunities that have come our way and knocked on our door, and we've been ready to utilize those resources. You know, we could just use that resource to pad our pockets, but that's not what God wanted us to learn from that experience. We were most powerfully positioned to serve the person we once were.
That's so good, man. And I love your the mission and the core values. You know, I'm going to touch on a couple of the core values, but just to your point earlier, I've been in pharmaceutical and medical for about 16 years. So when you said pharmaceutical, I didn't realize that about you, but I know what you're talking about. It can be pretty lucrative. And if you kind of stockpile that, right. And that is kind of a nest egg to make investments, but it's kind of cool that we have that commonality. But
that's great.
When you talk about ownership as one of your values, right? I would like first kind of to distinguish, and ownership could be a broad brush, and distinguish between taking responsibility and then having accountability. Because I think we live in a world now where very few people are willing to take responsibility, personal agency, right, in what they are stewarding and in themselves. How do you coach that as a parent? How do you coach that as an employer? The accountability level and responsibility level. How do you drive that home?
Yeah. I mean, speaking to core values here at Mountain Ops, every month there's a lot of core values at Mountain Ops. There's 12. Sure. There's one for every month. And so we spend that month focusing on this month's desire. And so we train that at the beginning of the month, and we issue a challenge with that so that people can keep it front and center. We have our Conquer More challenge at Mountain Ops every month, and it's a goal spiritual, a goal physical, a goal mental, social, and then right in the middle, whatever the core value of the month is. Yeah. I do that at home with my wife and kids as well. So this month at home, we sat around the table. We have our Conquer 90 journals. So they go through a 12-month journaling, and it's a core value per week. And so my family, this last week, we just started a new 12 weeks. So we're starting on recognizing God. We always start with recognizing God and with joy. Looking back at the journey, did we experience joy in that? But when it comes to ownership, I go back to even that prayer that I offered where I felt like, okay, I wrote the check. There was all of a sudden this, like, I had to own that. There was, there was some accountability to that. And I couldn't put the blame on someone else. It was me writing that. Yes, there were some things out of our control. And then the responsibility came by way of recognizing that I was learning some things because I wrote that check. My eyes were being opened to some experiences that we wouldn't have otherwise had. And that I needed to have ownership over those perspective moments as well. I think so often we just look at ownership as accountability. And at Mountain Ops, we tie our accountability structure to our core values. It makes it easy to have a conversation around choices and are we doing the right thing when it's tied to, hey, how did this decision help us build trust with a customer? It didn't. So we need to not do that. And so we can hold each other accountable based off of what we've signed up to do through the core values that are our decision-making factors and guardrails. So that's really, it makes it easy for a guy that doesn't like conflict, doesn't like drama. The core values, when you sign up at Mountain Ops, I met with and onboarded a new team member today. I talked through all the core values, and I used some of the choices I had made in life that align with those core values. And so it is accountability, and we try to do that with our kids. We use this journal in many regards for our children, and there's some rewards at the end of it. If they're accountable to it, they respond to it. Yes, I got these things done. It's helped me as a father, and it's helped me with as a leader here in this business. But then I think so often the accountability side of responsibility gets overlooked. It's just accountability, right? But when it comes to, I love talking about perspective in life and experiences that we have because they afford us perspective. That's a choice. And are we owning that at those choices that we make to see what's happening in our lives and applying it in a meaningful and powerful way, that's where you are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. Going through financial difficulties, 90% of people can say, yes, I've been through it. Can 90% of people say, I've responded to it in a way that now I'm feeding hungry children? And I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. This is a team effort. Our whole team, they're bought into Operation Conquer Hunger. But we chose to have ownership over our losses, our difficulties, the dark waters we felt like we were sinking in. And we said, hey, there's a choice here and an ownership of that experience. Let's apply it. And that sometimes becomes an uncommon thing. But Mountain Ops is choosing to own those experiences and apply them. So
and I wish I could. For the sake of time, I probably can't cover all 12, but we're sort of indirectly hitting all 12. But I do have to ask: is that journal available on your website, or is it?
It is
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, it's
on the website.
Worth noting. Okay,
yeah, it takes you through it every day for 90 days, and yeah,
that's cool. All right. Well, we're gonna get that link in the notes for sure. I'm interested. I heard you talk about culture, and you kind of already talked a lot about it because you've been intentional with the team you built early on, and then you continue to add. So, is there a particular DNA when you're recruiting for the company? Like, is there, obviously you can't, or I don't know, maybe you can limit it to, hey, this is a Christian organization, but maybe not all the people that work for you are necessarily Christians. So how do you navigate that? And then what are you looking for in sort of like, I guess, a powerful, recruiting powerful team members?
Yeah, it's the most important part of assembling the team, to be honest. I mean, there's skill and there's will, and the will comes by being attached to the core values and the mission. And so you have to hire for skill, but when things get tough or just the day-to-day tasks, that you need that will to kick in. And that will only kick in if people are truly attached to the core values. They can't just be fancy words on a wall. They've got to be written upon the hearts of individuals. And so we don't say in an interview, like, you've got to be Christian, you've got to be this. We just say, here's our core values. What are your thoughts on them? Any that cause concern, any that are out of the realm for you? Like, what are your, and so usually people, when we're recruiting, it's if we put something out on LinkedIn, we'll get 200 or 300 applicants right away. And so it's sometimes difficult to do it that way because we have so much inbound interest, and they already understand our culture. They understand the mission because we're such an outward facing brand. We talk about the core values, but more importantly, we live them. I'm grateful that you say that you see us living those, because that's where there's true and real impact, is when people live them. Probably the one core value that people have a question about the most, whether they're Christian or not, is like, okay, you say recognizing God. We don't typically see that on a core value sheet for a brand. And how do you live that in a workplace? Because our core value is we recognize God even in the workplace and acknowledge his hand in all things. It's our number one core value. It's what, for me, and you mentioned it earlier, founding a business, you kind of have your leeway to say, here's how we're going to operate. Here's the core values. Here's the line in the sand. This is how we're going to make decisions. I couldn't go through everything I have in life and not say, hey, recognizing a higher power has been the most integral part of any type of success that I've found. So that becomes number one. And almost just like the great commandment, like if you follow that, all the rest, trust, service, family, ownership, diligence, they all become part of your DNA. But we don't test anyone to say, hey, how do you feel about this or that? We just look for good people with good hearts that want to be a part of something good. And there's a diverse group here actually at Mountain Ops that look at their higher power some ways in a different way. And I'm okay with that. If somebody wants to pray a different way than me, that's great. But how does it look at Mountain Ops to recognize God? You're not asking that, but I'll just tell you kind of what that culture looks like on Tuesday mornings. We gather as a team, and there's a prayer every Tuesday morning that as we start. We have a hybrid model, so Mondays and Fridays usually people are working from home. So Tuesdays everyone's here. We gather together and we start it with a prayer, recognizing God. If you come to any of our Operation Conquer Hunger events, we say a prayer to recognize God. But I even see like recognizing the good in others and putting the good in others, the gifts they have to work, you're recognizing God, because anything that's good comes from him. And
Mm,
so sometimes it's as simple as that, putting the talents and abilities of others to work in the right ways and highlighting them, awakening the divine within them, allowing them to be themselves and contribute in a way that's meaningful and personal and unique to them. It's an incredible way to build culture, because then people feel safe and they feel like they can contribute in an authentic way to the gifts they have, and without trying to be something that they're not. So for me, I am who I am wherever I am, and I want people to feel the same. And so if
yeah.
they could say, yeah, these core values make sense to me, I love them, I respect them, I want to strive to do better with them, that makes all the sense in the world. Bring in partners on, they have to be ambassadors, that type of thing. They've got to feel the same way, or else there's just going to be
Yeah.
a disconnect in the culture and the brand. And so we look
Yeah.
for people that those values mean something to them. It's not
Yeah.
just about a transaction. The transactions will come if we're aligned and we enhance the brand experience for everyone, but that comes by abiding by following core values. Because when we make decisions contrary to it, we diminish the effect of the brand. And so that
Right.
extends to our sales force, our influencers, our,
Well,
anyone we work
yeah.
with.
Well, and when you have it posted and you talk about it and it's out there, you sort of are holding yourself accountable
Yeah,
every month. Like you have to, or else what are you, right? If you're not living
yeah.
what you're showing and talking about. So on the topic of culture, like I wonder, what would you consider the most challenging part of building a healthy culture? Like what, because I mean, what you're saying all conceptually sounds great. Like who wouldn't want that? And I know you're talking about how your team is a healthy, thriving team, and it clearly shows, but it hasn't always been perfect, and it probably isn't still. But what are some of the most challenging parts of building that healthy culture?
It'll come back down to being in alignment with each other, with team members on core values. In my opinion, the best thing about business and culture is the people, and the hardest thing about business and the culture is the people. And it doesn't mean that the majority are struggling with it or making it hard. Sometimes it's just a small few that aren't aligned and make it difficult for others. But in any partnership in business, in life, whatever, like, alignment of core values creates culture and creates a successful culture. When there's disalignment, you can't really create culture in disalignment. And so, I just spoke to my team recently about alignment. And I shared with them, I've got a daughter that's serving a mission in Brazil right now. And in Brazil on the Amazon, I don't know how often it is, but when there's this lunar eclipse, they call it the Great Roar, because everything's in alignment, the sun, the moon, the earth. And the Amazon River actually starts to create a wave, and they call it a roar, and it goes the upstream, it goes against the current, and it builds to the point where it's like people can go ride a wave for like 35 minutes instead of a few minutes. And so
Wow.
people come from all over to ride up the Amazon River on this wave. That's what culture creates, that kind of
Wow.
momentum. Yes, we're going against the current. We're different. We're recognizing God. We're out there feeding hungry children. Show me another supplement brand that is using their revenue to feed hungry
Wow.
children from a unique standpoint, because we've been there, we've felt it, we've experienced it. There isn't
Yeah.
another. And so you create this roar, this incredible experience that people can jump on and they can ride that wave for a long time. We're creating longevity and relationships, but it all comes into play when there's alignment. And it's
That's
all
right.
based around core values. It's our
That's
decisions,
right.
it's our
That's
choices.
good. That's awesome. I would ask too, because of what I've heard you talk about the mission trip. How's for Portuguese coming along?
It's clicking right now. She's been out there almost 5 months, but man, the first 6 weeks, every call with her every week was like, I don't know how to do, like, I'm lost. This identity crisis. I can't talk. I can't understand this and that. 2 weeks ago, I think it was, she called us and she said, I had my first dream in Portuguese. And that's when I served in Mexico.
Wow.
So I knew when I had my first dream sorry, in Spanish, it was like things started to click. When you're not like even
Yeah.
dreaming in your original language,
Yeah.
then you're immersed, you're feeling
You're
it. And
you're
so
aligned, right? You're aligned to your
there's alignment,
point.
and
Yeah.
and that, the people she's been with, most of them
That's
have not
awesome.
spoken English, and so it forces you to jump in and understand, or try to understand. And so 5 months in, she's speaking in an incredible way, understanding, teaching, and it's awesome for her. So
Well,
she's in
I
this mode right
heard
now where she's on fire.
you gave some good advice to her. I think you said just smile at people. Your countenance will be welcoming, and even if you can't speak the language, right?
That
Um,
there's a language of love and of spirit
yeah,
that's more powerful than words at times, and
yeah,
it goes back to what you're saying about core values. Like let people see you living them more than preaching about it.
mhm,
Like
yeah,
just live it. And so yeah, she's got a bright countenance. Let him shine through you. Let his light shine through you,
yeah.
and people will feel it maybe in a more impactful and meaningful way than when you start to speak.
Maybe,
So.
yeah. Well, so on culture though, I mean, I know you mentioned that the alignment and you've got to have everybody bought into those values, but what's something that leaders or most leaders underestimate about the power of a good culture or a healthy culture? Like what is something that people just kind of underestimate, breeze by, take for granted? Anything come to mind along that line?
It's an well, man, probably a lot of different things, but I think that if they haven't experienced it before and they come to a place like Mountain Ops and they experience this culture, it's like a stark difference. Like, okay, I can see it. I can see the power behind this. But we've got a lot of people in our team that this might be their first or second workplace that they've been at. And so it just this maybe is how it is everywhere, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not. Like we just hired a new CEO and he's here and he's like, "Hey, this isn't everywhere." You know, he came
Wow.
from bodybuilding.com. He was the CEO of On It. And they had great cultures at both, but Mountain Ops is unique and
Mm,
it's different. And so helping those that maybe don't have tenure or at different places, different cultures to understand, hey, this is not something to take for granted. And then at times you're so close to it and we're training on it and there's repetition that sometimes it can become like, okay,
yeah.
yeah, we've heard this before. It's the norm. And you can think that this is good, but it's probably what's happening elsewhere, right? I took my
Wow.
daughters on a buffalo hunt a couple years ago, and we found the buffalo, and they all herded up. And you think, man, they're only 150 yards away, but we couldn't shoot. They were protected because of the proximity to each other. They were protected by being with each other.
Oh,
And
wow.
we just waited. What we did was we sat and we waited until one of them thought maybe the grass is greener on the other side and started to wander away. And then there's danger. And that's when the shot gets taken. And so
Wow.
it's helping, you know, as leaders, making sure we understand and there's gratitude. And I think it comes down to that core value of ours, gratitude,
Yeah.
recognizing what we have, paying attention to it, expressing gratitude for it each day. So much of life is just attitude around being grateful and
Right.
gratitude, and so helping people understand, hey, this culture is meant to bring us together and to connect us, and there's power and there's protection in this proximity and in living this way. But
Mm,
you might be so close to it at times that it's hard to see at all times the value of it. So you might start to wander off and think, oh, it's probably this way everywhere, and it's not
right.
always. There's
Yeah.
plenty of great companies out there and great cultures, and so there's a lot of companies that maybe have a better, stronger culture. I don't know. I know what I know here, but even myself being so close to it, I can forget at times how good we have it and how grateful I should be. And so it's the reminder of constantly looking at like the grass isn't greener over here.
Yeah.
It's protected and it's green right here where we stand, you know.
Well,
So
didn't you say you guys were voted the best place to work in Utah or one of the best?
yeah,
Is it? Yeah, yeah. So that's not by accident.
yeah.
And so the buffalo hunt, I don't see any evidence of that behind you. So I'm wondering, did you get a trophy from that hunt, or is it in your daughter's bathroom
Uh,
at home?
there's it's in the freezer at home and it's hanging in my office at home. Both daughters got buffalo. My wife shot a buffalo. I shot. My wife will
Okay.
cook with bison more than she will cook with any other meat. And so
Yeah,
for me, it's one of those things
it's great.
when the freezer's getting empty with the bison, it's like I'm excited because I know another hunt's on the horizon because my wife's gonna want me to get out. So I try to give
That's
as
awesome.
much of
Yeah,
it
you
away
played
as
that
possible.
perfectly. You played that perfect.
But
Oh
yeah,
man,
we've got the buffalo for
that's
whatever
cool.
reason. They're all at home. We're running out of space
Well,
here. So
okay, so as a dad on that point of parenting, what if I got your kids in a room and you were off kind of in a booth just sort of listening? What would they say they respect most about their dad, and then maybe about you as a business person as well? Because I mean, you've clearly integrated the culture to your family, and you are today who you are tonight when you leave there. So what would they say they respect most about their dad, you think?
Man, I don't want to try to speak
I'm gonna pull at your heartstrings
positive
here. I don't know. I teed you up for that. Sorry.
heartstrings, and then I don't want to assume that these great things would be said about me, but we were actually, I took my two oldest daughters to an event with my wife and I once, and the speaker that was at that event, running the event, actually, we were good friends. He had been a mentor of mine, and he asked my daughters, what does your dad teach you? Like, what is the thing he focuses on in life with you? And they both just said Jesus Christ, like that. Like he his
That's the
focus is
biggest
on him.
compliment they could give you. You know, that's the biggest compliment you get.
And that's what I'd hope that they would say, because I don't want my life to be about me. I hope that my life points people
Right.
in a direction of somebody much greater. And
Hmm.
so I would think they would say at home and at work he's the same, and
Yeah.
his focus is on the Savior. Like that would be my
Yeah.
goal, and that would be my hope.
Yeah.
um but and then, my wife,
Yeah.
she's the MVP in our home, and keeps us all focused on the right things, and doesn't get enough credit for all that she does in providing that type of environment for our kids, and then for me to be able to go to work and focus on work and get things done for them. She just has kept us on track, honestly, with the same focus. She's been at events with me, and they'll put her on the spot and she hates it, but they'll say, how did you and your husband get through these hard times, and how did this all come together? And her response is always, instead of turning away from each other, we turn towards each other, and together we turn to God. And that's kind of our conquer code. That's how we've been able to
That's
get through.
good.
It's a reliance on him.
That's good, man. No, I had a feeling you were going to say that, and I hope that mine would say the same. And I also, just by in the 5 seconds I've known you, like they see how you serve, and they see how everything you do is like about everything but you. Like I can tell that everything you do, you're kind of you live last in line leadership. Like that's what our podcast is about, is servant leadership. And that's what I can tell you're all about, is other people. Um,
No, you're
man,
kind. I appreciate that.
yeah, so I've listened to a lot of your podcast, where you've been a guest, and the unsung hero, you just mentioned it, but the unsung hero to me too has been your wife in this whole. And I mean, you guys are aligned, of course, to that point. Again, we're going
Yeah.
to reinforce alignment. You're like-minded. She wanted you to ride a bull, for crying out loud, so she's clearly the unsung hero in all this. what,
Maybe I'm
what do
more dead
you
than alive.
what do you attribute to, like, what's the secret sauce to a healthy marriage, and maybe what do you admire most about her that she brings out too, that you want to be a better man when you're around her, clearly, but what do you admire most about her?
Yeah, she's the type that, like, she'll protect people, and if they're not in the room and you're talking negatively about them, don't talk to her about it. Like, there's none of that, so you can know she's going to protect you in conversations wherever you go. I've loved that about her. um
Aside
to
from double daring you to ride a bull, like she wants to protect other people, clearly.
Yeah, no, I think reputation of people, like, means a lot to
Yeah.
her, and it's
Yeah.
like there's no need to, like, downplay people, or there's no success in downplaying people's failures, or highlighting people's failures. She's allowed me to do some crazy things, like write a book. That it took me 7 years. I'm not a writer. Like, it took some time.
Wow.
And to start different businesses, when I was failing in others. And it was like, yeah, you should do that. It was never a stop doing this, like, just provide. There was times where it was like, how are we going to do
Wow.
this, Trevor? Like, what do we do? But I would say what I found in our marriage, our first year of marriage was difficult. We came together. She was 18. I was barely 21. We were young. We were raising each other. We were trying to figure out how to be adults in this, and our stubborn sides came out. I wanted things my way, she wanted things her way, and we butted heads for the first year of marriage. It wasn't easy, not to where we were like, hey, we're gonna be done with this. Just like,
Sure.
man, who are you? I thought,
Who didn't butt heads in their first 5 years of marriage, for crying out loud? Yeah.
So, and then we added our first daughter to the mix, and all of a sudden we were focused on something different. But during that first year, there was one thing I could always know was a constant for her, and it was that she put Christ first. He was number one. I would come second, and that to me created loyalty. It created trust. It created this awesome opportunity to say, like, I know she will try everything she can to do what is right and to live in that manner, following his characteristics. And I think she relied on the same thing with me, knowing like, okay, even though we can butt heads at times, like we both have this common denominator that we're focused on, which is our Conquer Code. When the title of my book, The Conquer Code, it's Jesus Christ. Like, every page of that book, it's Jesus Christ. And we had that similarity. And so there was alignment, like we've talked about. And I feel like when that alignment can come into play, and then you recognize the good, you focus on the good, you overlook the bad. We had some counsel right at the beginning of our marriage from an ecclesiastical leader. He said, look for the good and overlook the bad. And for me, there was so much good in her. But the number one was like, she was focused on the same strength I was focused on, and I could trust that. And so there was always a trust, and then support along the way with the crazy ideas that I had. But and with that trust and with her focus, I knew like, hey, she's going to be an incredible mother. She's going to be awesome. She has Christ-like qualities that she's going to attribute. She's going to contribute to their lives with. And so I was so excited for us to bring that first child, and the second, the third, and fourth. We've got 3 daughters and a son, and they've had this mother to take care of them when I've been out at business or whatnot, trying to obviously provide. But they have this Christ-like mother who applies those characteristics of Christ into her life and leads in that type of way with no expectation of fanfare, of limelight, or spotlight. She would prefer not to have that. But
well, that's kind of why I wanted to highlight her, because I know that a lot goes assumed that you've just got a really good wife and a really good partner, but I think it's worth letting our listeners know that part of why you are who you are is that iron sharpening iron with her. And I would ask you though, does she call you out sometimes? Like, some of the greatest qualities in my wife that I like is she doesn't really let me get by on the BS. Like if I'm out of line thinking something, she's like, all right, you're a little out of line there. Let's think about what you're saying. Does she do that?
100%. I think that's so needed. The radical candor is definitely alive and well. And and sometimes it's not easy to hear, because that's the one person you want like validation and strength. But it's like, you know what? Just yesterday, and I can't even remember what it was. We were driving. I was on the phone with her while driving, and she said, no, but have you thought about like, and I said, you know what? That is completely right. But I felt a little stupid, but I realized by saying, you're completely right away, it went like, that was good, and recognizing that she's going to have a viewpoint when I'm sometimes in the trenches here. She's going to have this perspective that's different. It might be more clear. It might be more concise. It might be exactly what I need at times to really help push things forward. And, in my book, one of the phases, it's all about our love story. And, it's first comes the love, but it's not the love of me and her. It's the love of Jesus Christ, what I was just talking about. Each of us having him as a priority. And then it's first comes love phase 2, which is the love with her. And I've had so many people read this book, not knowing a lot about my wife, Jenna, and then messaging me saying, I fell in love with your wife. This is incredible. It's so fun to hear the other side of the story and the perspective that she brought, the struggle she went through. And it was hard. Like, one of the things that I regret most during those difficult times was that she wanted to be involved in the finances. I think that's a good thing for marriages, for both to come together, understand and have a clear picture. She wanted to pay the bills. And so she wanted to be aware of what was in, what was coming out. And I loved that. But while the bank account was dwindling to where we were living life below zero, she was the one either writing the check or telling or saying, we can't write that check or this or that. And I was scared to death to even look into the bank account while she was getting in there every day. And went to the point where one day she came to my office and fell on the floor and she's like, it's all gone. Like, and I couldn't understand. She was, just sobbing
Carrying
and
that
she said,
burden.
got in the bank account. It's all gone. It's done. And so I feel like maybe in some ways I put a burden on her that I shouldn't have during that. She wanted to be aware, she wanted to be in the know, and I have always appreciated that about her because it's a team effort. She wanted to be there with me, understanding it all, and pointing out where things could be corrected at times, and pulling her weight.
Well, and see, I'm conflicted a little bit on some of that because I'll hear certain extremes about, the man only does the finances, and my wife's an accountant, and that's how her mind works. She is list, task, check box, off. She's got to see everything balanced. Like that's her wheelhouse. And I think that would be selfish to pull that away from her gifting. Now I'm in the loop and we're very closely tied to the budget and communicating, but she has had to carry some of that weight emotionally when it was thin, right? Yeah. But no, I see what you're saying. I totally lived that. And so, man, the book's, I assume, doing really well. It just recently came out, so it's only going to hockey stick from here on out as far as just the reception. Right. Did you have a particular avatar person that you were writing that for? Or, was there somebody that came to mind when you finished that last, or as you were writing it?
Yeah, I mean, I originally started writing, and I'm a storyteller. I like to take the stories that I've experienced in life and apply them to a greater perspective, maybe something that God's trying to teach me. And so it's made up of a lot of stories. Originally, it was like, this is going to be something to leave to my wife and my kids and to my grandkids,
Yeah.
And I was okay, and I still am. If that's what it ends up being for, it's for my wife and kids, that's it. But as I was writing, the person I once was always in my mind. That same quote, you're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. And so I walk people through 7 phases of like growth in my life, and I'm still on these. I still go back to them and I go through them because you're never complete, right? But I've learned some things through my years. Grateful for amazing parents that helped me with my foundational training in life. And then, my mission, it talks about what I experienced there, doing something that wasn't for myself. It was completely outward to help other people. And I learned that I was a mission-driven individual, and then coming home and having life come at you fast and training for, speed and endurance by now becoming a husband and father, and then starting a business and having these failures where it's, we were just built to conquer these mountains, but I needed to learn how. And I needed to learn where I would find strength and the relationships that would come into my life. And so I've looked at that, and I've had a lot of people reach out recently that said, hey, I'm where you were. This is exactly what I needed to hear. And so that avatar was like, hey, that person I once was, hopefully there's a young husband, a young father. Obviously I've not been a wife or a mother. I won't be, but like if there's a young wife or mother that's going through something similar, they can learn from what I share about my wife and my kids and how they were all involved in this process and this journey that still continues today. But we're at a different point where we've learned some incredible things and have applied them, and it's working. And it all works, in my opinion, because of that source of conquering. And it's my Savior, Jesus Christ, and he is my conquer code. And there was some adversity along the way. Like I didn't feel, there was multiple times where I was like, is there anything really of substance here that I should offer? I don't want people to think, hey, I've got a book. You should learn from me. I struggle with that. The
imposter syndrome is very real. It's very real.
Very real. And when I was down I flew to Texas to record the book, took 2 days to record the audio. And I would recommend if people grab a hard copy, but go to Audible and listen to it. These same tears you've kind of seen and heard today. I just can't share those stories without it really impacting me and my emotion and such. And I was worried because I was like, I've never listened to a book where the author is crying, but that happens in my book because these are so real and they're so impactful to my life. And so I think I've gotten a lot of feedback from people that have listened to it saying, hey, I really appreciated the emotion that you brought to it, but that is a stage of my life that I'm going through right now, and I
Wow.
needed that.
Wow.
But during that imposter syndrome filming or recording, sorry, not filming, but recording that, I just was feeling all these like doubts. Don't do this. Don't
Yeah.
release it, you know? And they were
That's
real,
the
these
enemy.
feelings. It
That's the
was the
enemy.
enemy.
That's
And I
right.
remember taking a call right towards the end. I had like of a 15-hour recording session. I had like 2 hours left. Went out, called my family, saying, I think I sound like an idiot reading this book. I keep crying, this and that. Like, I don't know if people are going to want to listen to this. My daughter in Brazil said, in church on Sunday, without being able to speak Portuguese, I felt like I needed to get up and say something from the pulpit. But I also felt like, no, you can't speak, you can't
Yeah.
share this, you don't know how, this and that.
Yeah.
Felt all these doubts. And then she's like, Dad, I got up and shared it. And then there was this immediate relief. And it wasn't just a relief because I was done. It was like this relief of like the spirit overwhelming me that you were supposed to say that. And
Yeah.
that the adversary was trying to keep you from saying
That's
that.
right.
So I went back into that recording studio with that mentality to finish off the next 2 hours. And I just had this incredible feeling. And I ended the book with a witness of our Savior Jesus Christ from my wife and I, just together.
Man.
Because it's not a conquering individually. I don't think we're meant to succeed alone. We
Sure.
connect and we conquer with
Yeah.
our family, with our team members, with our God. And so I wanted to end it as a way of sharing from my wife and I together. Here's our witness of the Conquer
Wow.
Code. And I
Yeah.
felt an immediate impression that that's what he was trying to keep me from sharing.
Yeah.
The adversary would not want me to share that.
So good.
And then that relief that my daughter spoke of just overcame me.
Wow.
And so I'm grateful that it's out there. Whoever it can help, I hope it does.
Yeah.
And there's different scenarios of my life that will help people in different ways. And so,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
we learn through
awesome.
our own life's experiences, and sometimes we learn from the
Well,
experiences of others. And so that's why it's written.
you know as well as I do that when you're doing something for the kingdom or you're about to hit another level spiritually, the target on your back gets bigger and
Yeah.
the enemy comes for you. So anytime we have those doubts, they should be confirmation when we start having those limiting thoughts and imposter syndrome, like, oh, I'm going the right way because somebody doesn't want me to go this way. And
Yeah.
so that's confirmation. So, okay, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this. So this is my last question. I didn't plan for it, but being that you're mountain ops and you talk about conquering mountains, what is the mountain for you right now that you're trying to conquer?
Mm, it's really good. There's a few. I'm always relationships that matter most are always at the forefront of my mind. And so I've got children that are in different phases of life right now. And one's out in Brazil, one's starting her senior year of high school, one's last year of middle school, one's last year of elementary school. I more than anything want to give them time and attention that they need. Our time and attention is the most valuable gift we can
Mm-hmm.
give, and so I'm trying to manage my time and attention in a way that those relationships that matter most are afforded what they deserve, and that the relationships that I love most are taken care of. That's a mountain that I think we all probably are
Mm-hmm.
always climbing and trying to balance that. And there's never a true balance, but I want these children of mine, while they're going through these most critical times in life, especially their teenage years, to understand where they can find a true source of strength. And when their mom and dad aren't around, like my daughter's off in Brazil, she has a God in heaven who she can count on, even though
Mm-hmm.
her parents aren't close by. And so really just helping my children understand that, giving them that time and attention. I'm now at Mountain Ops, moving into a new phase of my responsibilities where I've hired my replacement, and that in and of itself can start to kind of do some things in your head where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
was that the right decision? I feel 100% peace with the decision, because I know this individual. I've known him for a few years, and when it came about, it was like, this is right. This is what I've been feeling prompted to do, and now I have the right person to do that. But now it's like I've got to still contribute to Mountain Ops in a meaningful way. I need to drive awareness to this brand that is blessing
Mm-hmm.
and transforming people's lives. And that can be daunting because I wouldn't call it necessarily I guess I'm not what's the word I'm looking for? Self-promoting. Like that's not an
Sure.
easy thing for me. And I don't want to be self-promoting. I want to be promoting of the business, but I've got a book and now we're starting a podcast. I struggle with feeling like, oh, is that trying to bring attention to me? No, it's not. I just need to be a voice for what good is happening here at Mountain Ops. And so that's a mountain I'm facing moving into this new role of really applying myself in a way that's getting out there, connecting with people in a more powerful, unique, and maybe intimate way at times, speaking, podcasting,
Yeah.
and having these conversations that are somewhat new to me at times. You know, I've been
Yeah.
trying to do more and more podcasts over the last little bit, but now we're starting our own and we're doing more speaking and we're getting out there. And sometimes
Yeah.
that's daunting for me. And the book in and of itself, I'm like opening up my the curtain to my life and
Oh
my
yeah.
family and all that.
Yep.
But there's nothing in there that I'm ashamed of. It's you know it's true to who I am, and so it's
Right.
just while we climb that mountain, trusting that like God's been a part of guiding this the whole way, and just being true to who I am and aligned with my core values with God.
Yep.
That's how I feel like I'm going to overcome. But it's a new phase, it's a new obstacle, it's a new challenge, which I'm
Well,
super excited about as well.
of course. And I mean, I've seen kind of who you're connected to and people that and you won't have to self promote at all. Like you will have plenty of people promoting Mountain Ops and promoting you and your culture because they know you and they see you're not just talking about it, but you're being about it. And so you're not going to have to do that. And the Lord's been with you this whole time. So yeah, I have full confidence that this brand is going to just get more well known, probably not even by your voice, but by everybody kind of saying, hey, you need to talk to this guy. They're legit, that's quality. So I feel
Well,
confident
I
in that.
appreciate that confidence and the encouragement. It's
Absolutely.
for whatever reason, I need that type of confidence and encouragement from others.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Well, man, we're going to put all the links for Mountain Ops and for your book in the show notes. It's
Awesome.
been really great getting to know you, and our listeners are going to get so much out of this. And so, with that audience, he has been the one and only Trevor Farnes. We've been last in line. Be blessed.